Nobody talks about the 7 heavenly virtues, and I think I know why. Because real virtue isn't inspiring, it isn't clean, it isn't someone waking up and deciding to be good. It's guts still standing after the world has tried to kill him 1,000 times. It's Thorfinn rebuilding himself from the ruins of who he used to be. It's Itadori carrying a monster inside his own body and refusing to become it. These characters didn't choose virtue, it was carved into them. 7 virtues, 7 characters, and not one of them came without a cost. Humility is one of those words that sounds simple until you actually think about what it requires. It doesn't just mean being modest, it doesn't mean downplaying yourself or pretending you aren't capable. Real humility means being willing to completely dismantle who you are and start over from nothing, and that is one of the hardest things a human being can do. Thorfinn Karlsefni from Vinland Saga is the best example of this in any anime or manga I have ever seen. And here is the thing, he wasn't always humble, not even close. When we first meet Thorfinn, he is around 6 years old, sailing with his father Thors, one of the most respected warriors alive. Thors is a man who walked away from war because he chose peace. And on that voyage, a mercenary named Askeladd ambushes their ship and kills him. Thorfinn watches his father die right in front of him. From that moment, Thorfinn's entire existence becomes about one thing: revenge. He follows Askeladd's band as a child soldier, fighting in skirmishes just to earn the right to duel Askeladd one-on-one. He gets faster, he gets more dangerous, he earns that duel over and over again, and he loses every single time. Because Askeladd isn't just a killer, he's brilliant. He outthinks Thorfinn every time Thorfinn comes at him with pure rage. This goes on for years. Thorfinn grows up inside a war camp, surrounded by violence, defined entirely by hatred. He has no friends, no dreams, no identity outside of the revenge that's been eating him alive since he was 6 years old. And then Askeladd dies. Not by Thorfinn's hand, in a throne room, by someone else's decision, for political reasons that have nothing to do with Thorfinn at all. Just like that, the only thing he had been living for was gone. What happens next is where Vinland Saga becomes something completely different from other revenge stories. Thorfinn doesn't find a new purpose immediately. He doesn't redirect his rage into something heroic. He collapses, he gets sold into slavery, and for a long stretch of the story, he is just empty, a person sitting inside their own body with nothing left to drive them. This is where his humility actually begins, not in a speech, not in a dramatic moment of realization. It begins in the dirt, in the daily experience of being a slave who used to be a weapon, in learning how to do ordinary things, farm work, manual labor, conversations with normal people, when the only skill he had ever developed was killing. There is a scene where Thorfinn has a nightmare about all the people he killed and wakes up screaming, and instead of pushing it away the way he would have before, he just sits with it. He lets it be real. He doesn't run from what he became. That moment of not running, that is humility, because Thorfinn had real power, real skill. He could have picked up a sword at any point and been dangerous again. The world would have let him. Violence would have taken him back immediately. He chose not to. Every single day he chose the harder, smaller, quieter life. By the end of his arc, he is not trying to be the strongest. He is not trying to get revenge on anyone. He is building a boat to sail to a land called Vinland, a place with no wars, no slaves, no killing. Not because he has become naive, but because he looked at what violence produced and decided the most radical thing he could do was refuse to participate in it anymore. That is not weakness. That is the hardest kind of strength there is. When most people hear the word patience, they picture someone sitting calmly, waiting without complaint, accepting that things take time. That is not what patience looks like in real life. Real patience, the kind that actually means something, is continuing to move forward when everything around you is designed to make you stop. Nobody in the history of manga embodies that more completely than Guts from Berserk. And the reason Guts hits so differently from other anime protagonists is because of where his story starts. Most shonen protagonists begin with a dream. Guts begins as a literal orphan, born from a hanged corpse on a battlefield, found by a mercenary band, raised not as a child but as a tool. He is given a sword before he is old enough to understand what war is, and he is forced to fight in it anyway. As a child, he is assaulted by a mercenary in his own camp. When he tells his adoptive father what happened, his father tries to sell him. Guts kills him to survive. He is around 9 years old. This is the foundation. Before the eclipse, before Griffith, before any of the supernatural horror that defines Berserk, Guts has already been through more than most characters experience in an entire series. Then he finds the Band of the Hawk. For the first time in his life, he has something close to belonging. He has Griffith, who sees something in him nobody else ever did. He has Casca, he has comrades, and for a while, Berserk lets you believe this is the story, a soldier finding his place. Then the eclipse happens. In a single night, Griffith sacrifices the entire Band of the Hawk to become a God Hand member. Every single person Guts considered family is killed around him. Casca is broken by what happens to her, and Guts is branded, a mark burned into his flesh that attracts demons and evil spirits to him every single night for the rest of his life. This is where a different story would break its protagonist. This is where most characters would either die or lose themselves completely. Guts gets up, not because he has a plan, not because he has hope, not even because he believes things will get better. He gets up because getting up is the only language he has ever spoken. From the time he was 9 years old, the world has been telling him to stop, and he has never once listened. What makes Guts' patience so devastating to watch is that Berserk never rewards it cleanly. The world does not eventually become fair to him. Every time he makes progress, something else gets taken. Every person he gets close to is put in danger. The brand never stops burning. The demons never stop coming. His patience isn't the peaceful kind. It is not graceful. It is furious and bloody and exhausted, but it is patience nonetheless. The choice to keep moving when stopping would be easier, when stopping would honestly make sense given everything that has happened to him. There is a moment late in the story where Guts finally allows himself to rest, where he puts the sword down for a little while and just exists without fighting, and it is one of the most affecting moments in the entire manga because you understand what it cost him to get there. Guts didn't learn patience. He was built into it by a world that never gave him any other option, and that is what makes it real. Here is something Naruto tells you in Rock Lee's very first appearance and never lets you forget. He cannot use ninjutsu, he cannot use genjutsu in a world where every single form of combat, every tactical advantage, every path to becoming a great ninja runs through those two disciplines. Rock Lee was born without the ability to access either of them. Every teacher who evaluated him said the same thing. You will never be a ninja, won't be a great one, will never be one at all. The system looked at him and told him his dream was not difficult. It was impossible. He didn't accept that. But here is what separates Rock Lee from every other hard work narrative in anime. And I want you to really hear this because it matters. Rock Lee did not work hard because he knew it would pay off. He worked hard with no guarantee that it would. There is no moment in his early story where a wise teacher tells him that effort always wins. There is no training montage where the results are immediate and clear. He trained alone, in the dark, doing things no one asked him to do, that no one was watching, that no one rewarded him for. His teacher Might Guy believed in him when nobody else did, but even Guy couldn't promise him that the work would be enough. Rock Lee just kept going anyway. The Chunin exam fight against Gaara is where all of that unseen work finally becomes visible to everyone. Lee has been hiding something the entire time, his training weights, metal weights so heavy that when he removes them and they crash into the arena floor, they crack the ground on impact. And then Lee moves, faster than the eye can follow, faster than Gaara's sand defense can react. In a world full of people with extraordinary natural gifts, a boy who was told he had none just became the most terrifying thing in the room. The entire stadium goes silent. Might Guy is crying before the fight is even decided, not because Lee is winning, because of what it means that he got here at all, because Guy knows how many mornings Lee was in that training ground before sunrise, how many nights he stayed until he collapsed, how many times he must have asked himself whether any of it was worth it. That is diligence, not the part where everyone finally sees it. The years before that, when nobody did. Rock Lee is proof that diligence is not about talent. It was never about talent. It is about what you do with the one door that stays open when every other door has been closed in your face. Lee had one door, taijutsu, physical training. That was it. And he walked through it so completely, so totally, so without reservation that he turned an impossibility into the most memorable fight of the entire Chunin exam arc. The sad part is that Gaara still wins. Lee's body gives out before the fight is finished, and even that doesn't break him. That is the detail that tells you everything about who Rock Lee is. Most depictions of kindness in fiction are easy. The character is just naturally warm. They were raised well, or they have a gentle personality, or the story simply needed someone to be the moral compass. The kindness costs them nothing because it was never difficult for them in the first place. Iroh from Avatar. The Last Airbender is completely different, and the reason he hits differently from every other wise mentor figure in animation is because of what you find out about who he used to be. He was not always a warm man. He was a general, a conqueror, the crown prince of the Fire Nation, the most powerful military force in the world. He led the legendary 600-day siege of Ba Sing Se, the great Earth Kingdom city. He was celebrated as a military genius, feared across the world. Then his son Lu Ten died in that siege, and Iroh walked away from the war, from his claim to the throne, from the entire identity he had spent his life building. He went on a journey, studied other cultures, became a tea master, found joy in small things, and somewhere in that process he became the man we meet in the show. This is the context that makes every single warm moment with Zuko land the way it does. Because Iroh knows what it means to lose a son, he carries that loss in every scene. Every cup of tea he makes for Zuko, every piece of advice he gives, every moment he refuses to give up on a boy who keeps pushing him away. All of it is a man who watched his own child die and decided he would not let that happen again to someone he loved. That is not innocent kindness. That is kindness that came through grief. The kind that only exists because something broke first. Charity is usually talked about in terms of money, giving what you have to people who need it more. But that version of charity is easy to romanticize because it doesn't cost the giver anything they can't recover from. Real charity, the kind that actually reveals who a person is giving what you cannot get back. Edward Newgate, Whitebeard, the strongest man in the world. To understand why Whitebeard's charity is so extraordinary, you have to understand what he could have had instead. He had the power of the Gura Gura no Mi, the ability to create earthquakes, to crack the very air itself, to destroy anything he chose. The world's greatest powers were afraid of him. The Marines built entire military doctrines around simply containing him. Gol D. Roger, the Pirate King himself, respected Whitebeard as an equal. With that power, Whitebeard could have had territory spanning the entire world. He could have accumulated wealth beyond imagination. He could have ruled through fear the way Kaido did, the way Blackbeard wanted to. He chose to spend his entire life protecting people who had nothing. His crew was not built from the strongest pirates he could recruit. It was built from people the world had thrown away, orphans, outcasts, people who had been abandoned, discarded, told they had no value. Whitebeard found them and told them they were his sons and daughters, and then he spent the rest of his life making sure that meant something. This is not a small thing. In One Piece's world, having that many people who call you family means that every enemy, every government, every rival knows exactly how to hurt you. Whitebeard made himself vulnerable on purpose. He chose love over invulnerability. That is charity at its most complete, giving not just resources but protection, identity, belonging to people who had never had any of those things. The war at Marineford is where his charity becomes almost incomprehensible. He is already dying before the war begins. His body is failing. His heart condition is severe. Every doctor on his crew has told him he is not healthy enough to fight. And when the world government announces they are going to publicly execute Ace, one of his commanders, one of his sons, Whitebeard goes to war anyway, against the entire marine force, against 3 admirals, against the 7 warlords, against the most powerful military organization in the world. He takes 267 sword wounds. He is shot by over 100 cannonballs. He is struck by lightning. He is stabbed through the chest from behind. His body is described by the narrator as having received damage that should have killed him several times over. He does not fall. He keeps moving forward because he decided before the war started that his life was worth less than Ace's freedom. That everything he had, his strength, his health, his remaining years, was already spent on the people he loved. There was nothing left to protect for himself. He dies standing up, the only man from Roger's era who was never once brought to his knees. That is what charity actually looks like when it's taken to its absolute end, not giving from surplus, giving until there is nothing left. Temperance is the virtue nobody finds exciting. It does not produce great speeches. It does not have a dramatic origin moment. It is the daily, unglamorous discipline of someone who has decided that losing control is something they simply cannot afford. Levi Ackerman has never lost control in his life, and once you understand why, it stops looking like a personality trait and starts looking like survival. Levi grew up in the underground, a city beneath the walls of Attack on Titan's world where sunlight never reaches and the people who live there are considered worthless by the society above them. He was raised in poverty by a woman named Kuchel who was ill and unable to care for him properly. When a man named Kenny Ackerman found him crouched next to his mother's body because she had died and no one had come, Kenny didn't comfort him. He taught him how to fight, how to survive, and then he left. This is where Levi's temperance begins, not in the Survey Corps, not as humanity's strongest soldier, in a place where nothing was guaranteed and losing your composure meant someone else could take advantage of it. When Levi eventually joins the Survey Corps under Erwin Smith, he becomes the most precisely controlled soldier anyone has ever seen. Every movement is deliberate. Every word is stripped of anything unnecessary. He does not perform emotion. He does not allow himself the luxury of visible grief. In a series where people die constantly, where every mission outside the walls is a gamble with human lives, Levi is the person who keeps functioning when everyone else is falling apart. And here is the thing the show makes you understand slowly. Levi has lost more people than almost anyone else in Attack on Titan. His original Special Operations Squad, every single one of them dies. Because Levi learned something that most people never have to learn. When you are responsible for other people's lives, what you feel in a given moment cannot be the thing that makes the decision. Grief cannot make the decision. Rage cannot make the decision. The decision has to come from somewhere colder and clearer than emotion. The moment that reveals everything about Levi is when Erwin is dying, and Levi has the serum that could save him. But saving Erwin means not saving Armin. He makes the choice in seconds, and then he walks away from Erwin's body and keeps moving, not because he doesn't care, the opposite, because he has trained himself so completely to function through loss that caring and continuing are no longer in conflict for him. That is what temperance actually costs. It is not the absence of feeling, it is the complete mastery of when feeling gets to speak. Let me redefine something before we talk about Yuji Itadori. Chastity is not about purity in the way most people use that word. It is not about being untouched or innocent or free from darkness. The actual meaning of chastity, the one that has existed since before anime, since before fiction as we know it, is the refusal to be corrupted by what you carry, the ability to hold something dangerous inside you and not become it. With that definition, Yuji Itadori is the most literal depiction of this virtue that fiction has ever produced. Here is his situation. Yuji is a completely ordinary high school student, genuinely kind, athletic, with an absurdly strong body, but no supernatural ability. Then a cursed object gets broken at his school, and people he cares about are about to die. So he does the only thing he can think of. He swallows a finger of Ryomen Sukuna, the king of curses, the most powerful and sadistic entity in the history of the Jujutsu world, and lets it possess his body to fight off the threat. He survives. Sukuna is contained inside him. And from that moment, Yuji Itadori's entire existence becomes a shared body situation with something monstrous. Now think about what that actually means day to day. Sukuna is not just dangerous, he is actively cruel. He enjoys causing suffering, he has contempt for human beings, and he lives inside Yuji, watching everything Yuji does, waiting for moments of weakness or unconsciousness to take control. There are moments in the series where Sukuna takes over and uses Yuji's hands to kill people, and Yuji has to live with that, has to carry the memory of what his body did while he wasn't the one controlling it. Most people in that situation would eventually start to blur the line, would find a way to rationalize using Sukuna's power more directly, would tell themselves that the ends justify the means, that the world needs them to use every tool available, that a little corruption is worth it if it saves more lives. That is the psychologically logical response to carrying something that powerful when the stakes are that high. Yuji never blurs the line, not because he is naive. He understands exactly what Sukuna is. He has seen what Sukuna does when given even a moment of freedom. He carries the guilt of every person who died in those moments in every scene of the series. It never leaves him. But there is a distinction Yuji holds on to with everything he has. The distinction between carrying something and becoming it, between having darkness inside you and letting it define you. He refuses to let Sukuna's presence change who he fundamentally is, a person who genuinely cares about other people, who hates seeing suffering, who would rather put himself at risk than let someone else get hurt. There is a version of this story where Yuji eventually decides that the only path to defeating Sukuna is to stop resisting him, to embrace what he is, to let the corruption in because fighting it is costing too much. That would be the dramatically convenient choice, the transformation arc, the moment the protagonist becomes something harder and darker and more powerful. Jujutsu Kaisen has not given Yuji that exit, because chastity, real chastity, is not a one-time decision you make and then maintain automatically. It is made again every single day, every time Sukuna stirs, every time the easier path involves giving a little more ground.